All right, hey VC, I'm Jamie. Welcome back. We're back with Vinyl Finds Part 2. And the reason that this is Part 2 is because on my last video that became titled Vinyl Finds Part 1, I was recording it along and my iPad just stopped recording, but I hadn't realized it stopped recording and I was still showing albums and noticing that the timer wasn't moving, and sure enough it had just kind of stopped almost in the middle of it. So I thought, well, let's make it a Part 2 video. And so I was going to wear the same shirt as the last one, but I thought, let's just get to it and keep on trucking, shall we? Will. So we're going to start things off with some jazz. Wynton Marsalis and Hot House Flowers. And for many, including me, this was an introduction to Wynton Marsalis, released in 1984 on CBS Columbia. A number of jazz covers like Stardust and When You Wish Upon a Star. And not only introduced to Wynton Marsalis, but his brother Branford Marsalis plays soprano and tenor saxophone on this one. Very nice album. Okay, another Santana album. This one, a double album from 1977, and this is Santana and Moonflower, a mix of both live stuff and studio stuff. They had a hit with their cover of the Zombies, as She's Not There. That's featured on this. But at the live stuff, man, Santana and the band are absolutely on fire. So Santana and Moonflower, a double album. Okay, and speaking of a mix of live and studio stuff, we have Goodbye Cream, of course, with Eric, Ginger, and Jack, and kind of a whimsical cover for a band that was completely breaking up. Again, live and studio stuff. This is noted for the track Badge that was co-written by George Harrison, and I picked this one up for $5, and I usually see this one priced at least a little bit higher than that. Finally came across a Roy Harper album. I never see Roy Harper albums in my area, and this is the Unknown Soldier. And he's looking very GQ on this cover. Now in the UK, this has a completely different cover. Roy Harper sang on Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here album on the track Have a Cigar. David Gilmour plays guitar. He's all over this album, as is Kate Bush on back vocals. So yeah, it has a little bit of an 80s feel. This came out in 1980 on EMI Harvest, but hopefully I'll be able to come across more Roy Harper albums. Interesting artist. Okay, it's a thrift store find. If you're in the elevator, it's the Living Strings play Henry Mancini. And I did pick this up because this is a Living Stereo release. That label or that series are just generally really nice sounding records, or at least very well recorded and produced. And, it's Henry Mancini. It's, it's strings. It's, perfect music for the elevator, the escalator. They don't do the Pink Panther theme on this one, but it's Moon River, Breakfast at Tiffany's, Peter Gunn, that sort of thing. But it's a lovely sounding record for sure, and in good condition for a thrift store find. Okay, a little bit of Canadian content. We have the band Beau Dage and Au Forum de Montreal, and obviously from the title that this is a live album. And Beau Dage were a folk rock band from Quebec, released a number of albums over the years, and happy to pick up Beau Dage. A little bit more jazz. My gosh, what an amazing guitarist. This is Stanley Jordan, and the album is Flying Home, and he does a cover of, although you can't see it, this is clearly was a sort of library copy. I don't know, a library or a radio station copy, but he does a cover of Stairway to Heaven on here. And again, it's all instrumental jazz, but his cover of Stairway to Heaven in a very jazz context is pretty wild. But what an incredible guitarist. I'm definitely going to have to seek out some more of his stuff. Stanley Jordan. It's just a lot of notes and not heavy stuff. Just wonderful playing. Stanley Jordan. Okay, this was a thrift store find, and it's one of those albums that, it is a classic. This is Walter Carlos, now Wendy Carlos, and the Trans Electronic Music Productions, Inc. Presents Switched on Bach. And it's one of those albums we kind of take for granted now, but certainly at the time of the release, this was a big album. And so, again, another very whimsical cover. And again, sort of that whole, virtuoso electronic performance on the Moog synthesizer, or Moog synthesizer. I'm never quite sure how to pronounce that, but there you go. Happy to pick that one up. Okay, another unusual example of both live tracks and studio tracks. So this is Canadian artist Valdi, and I think this is his either third or fourth album, and Family Gathering, doing live stuff of songs that had been fairly recently released at the time. This came out, I want to say, like in the early 70s, but side two is then all studio tracks, including the track Renaissance. Again, Valdi, quite a folk artist, has performed across Canada. I've seen Valdi perform many, many times, but Valdi and Family Gathering. Okay, this is something that's quite unique. I do love label compilations because I think they can always be quite interesting. And this is the MCA Sound Conspiracy with a number of artists, that a few that I was not familiar with. Of course, familiar with Matthew Southern Comfort, but there's also a band called Help on here, Raw, an artist simply called Melissa, and I would say in terms of the musical focus, it's all over the map, if you will, on this one. But always kind of happy to pick these up, especially label compilations that are always kind of interesting. And this one came out in 1971. The MCA Sound Conspiracy. I love it, and I love when they have the small pictures of the albums, often in black and white. They give you kind of a write up on each one. Always enjoyed Jimmy Cliff. Jimmy Cliff, of course, a very special artist, and this is Jimmy Cliff and Special. And this has kind of the Rolling Stones imprint on this one. This was produced by Chris Kimsey, who was a Rolling Stones co-producer and engineer, and Ronnie Wood plays guitar on a couple of tracks on here. And this is, again, Jimmy Cliff, in the early 80s, 1982 on CBS, trying to get a little bit more mainstream, but still not straying too far from the wonderful reggae sounds that he has produced over the years. Jimmy Cliff and Special. Okay, speaking of that MCA label conspiracy, or whatever they called it, this is the Lost Leaders series, and this is on Warner Brothers, and this is called Zapped. So you're thinking if this is a complete Frank Zappa compilation. It's not. Frank Zappa is featured on here, but this has a number of Warner Brothers reprise artists at the time, including Alice Cooper, also Captain Beefheart, and Wildman Fisher, who does his track Merry-Go-Round. And Wildman Fisher was certainly a wild artist. Tim Buckley's featured on here as well. As I mentioned, Frank Zappa. I really do love these Lost Leader albums. And this one, for whatever reason, is also, there's an alternate cover to this one, but this is the album Zapped. Came out in 1970. And these were things you could mail away for through Warner Brothers, usually just for a couple of bucks, that sort of thing. And they were mail order only and sort of label compilations, which is kind of neat. Okay, picked this up at a local thrift store. It's not in great shape, but it's the Beatles' Long Tall Sally. So a Canadian release on this one. And this is part of the, as I've mentioned many times, the Capital 6000 series. That was a Canadian series designed to not only showcase Canadian artists, but to mainly artists internationally to the Canadian artists. So it's a dream to own everything from the Capital 6000 series. It's going to be, that would be a lot of albums. It'd be like owning all the the special, I don't know, the tone poets or things like that. But yeah, so this is a Canadian release. I Want to Hold Your Hand, Saw Her Standing There, You Really Got a Hold of Me, Roll Over Beethoven, that sort of thing. We've got the early tracks there. And Beatlemania, of course, that was also a Canadian Capital release. And again, this is not in the best of shape for sure. There's writing all over it, but was definitely happy to pick that one up. Okay, here's a best of I didn't even know existed. This is a Canned Heat best of, simply called Cookbook. Again, a signature of the previous owner on here, but this is a nice early best of Canned Heat, and this is on the Liberty label, so it's not like a TV release or anything like that, but Canned Heat and Cookbook. So yeah, it was, of course, features going up the country. They're great to blues rock sound. Starting to find Randy Newman records. Again, they've often been, for whatever reason, hard to find in my area. But this one, a pretty popular one, or at least more accessible or easier to find, if you will, is Randy Newman's Little Criminals, because this does feature the big hit Short People. But always happy to pick up Randy Newman albums for sure. Picked this one up at my local thrift store. This was the Rooftop Singers with Walk Right In, and this is on Vanguard, and this is actually a promo copy. So I'll take this one out and show it to you. This didn't have a sleeve, but looked at the white label, and sure enough, it is a promo copy, and it's in excellent condition. Wonderful folk music from the 60s, the Rooftop Singers, and Walk Right In. Now that is going to be an earworm for the rest of the video. Now this was a nice find from a fellow who sells records locally. This is Barry Goudreau, if I'm pronouncing his name properly, a guitarist with Boston, and this was his solo album, and this is quite significant on the Epic label, I want to say from 1980, I was going to say early 80s, because Boston lead vocalist Brad Delp is featured on this album. Also, it features lead vocals from Fran Cosmo, but boy, this really has a complete Boston sound. You could almost call this almost like a Boston Lost album, the band Boston. Now, of course, Tom Schultz is not involved with this project, but when you have the vocals of Brad Delp and that sort of whole Boston sound, makes for just a very, very enjoyable album for sure. Okay, and always enjoy Barry White, and this is Barry White Sings for Someone You Love, and this has got a nice little die cut. Now the original one, this was sort of something that opened up, like the bracelet kind of opened up to reveal Mr. White here, but that has clearly been, it's no longer part of this particular album. It's been ripped off or whatever, but again, love picking up Barry White albums. I'm surprised how cheaply I can find these, but I think, Barry White's just absolutely terrific for sure. Okay, how about Robert Palmer and the album Riptide? A very nice album. This one, of course, on Island Records from 1985 that has the hit Addicted to Love. And I forget that there was quite a single edit of that song. It's much longer on the album track. I think the album track's almost 6 minutes long. But it starts off with the album Riptide, which kind of... it's like an old song that kind of sets the tone, but this also features I Didn't Mean to Turn You On, but yeah, happy to pick this one up. Robert Palmer and Riptide. Joe Jackson's Jumpin' Jive. Joe Jackson album you almost kind of forget about. This one on of course, the A&M Records, and this one came out, what year was this? I want to say... Was this the late 70s or early 80s? 1981. And this is solid jazz from start to finish. And he's got quite a large band on this one. But it's just, as the cover suggests, says it looks like you're getting into some jazz. And you are absolutely getting into some jazz with Joe Jackson and Jumpin' Jive for sure. Okay, Uriah Heap. This is another, clearly a radio copy for this one. And I've never known how to pronounce the album title. Obama... I can't pronounce the title of this with the scary cover for sure. But this is solid Uriah Heap, as they were kind of changing their sound and the direction that they were going. This is from 1982, and it has a bit more of a streamlined, still rock and heavy, but it has more of a mainstream sort of. They've streamlined their sound a little bit more. But yeah, Uriah Heap. There you go. Okay. And speaking of Uriah Heap, I was able to pick up the album Look at Yourself on Mercury, and this is a bit of an upgrade for me. I had this album previously, but it was not in great condition. This cover in much better condition. This cover has had a different number of configurations, like especially with the lettering and the position of the eyes here, but a solid early Uriah Heap on Mercury and London Records. Really rocking great stuff. Enjoy this man, Uriah Heap. Okay, we got some Blue-Eyed Soul for you. How about Hall & Oates and Greatest Hits Part 1? And, in terms of the early stuff, or fairly early stuff, this kind of features everything you kind of need there in terms of Hall & Oates. You got Maneater, Rich Girl, She's Gone. I do like early Hall & Oates. Now when you get more into the 80s, I'm not as big a fan. Like Maneater, that sort of thing. Like, it's okay. This, at the time, had featured two new tracks that both were, I think, pretty big hits. Say It Isn't So and Adult Education. So you get your kind of bang for your buck on that one for sure. Okay, always happy to come across any Wishbone Ash, and this is a promo copy, Wishbone Ash, and just testing. It covers a little on the Warren side, but on the MCA label, Wishbone Ash. Okay, and I rarely come across reasonably priced XTC albums in the wild, and this is XTC and the Big Express, kind of a theme of trains and industrialism for this one, and this one produced by David Lord, and on the Virgin label from I want to say, is it 1981 or 1984? I want to say 1984 on this one, but in decent shape. And as I say, I never come across XTC in the wild anymore because they're starting to become quite the sought-after group for sure. But XTC, another very enjoyable album. Okay, Loggins and Messina, pretty easy to come across Loggins and Messina albums. I just like their that kind of folk rock sound. I just think they had a nice sound. I was able to pick this up locally at Value Village or thrift stores, and yeah, it's just another nice Loggins and Messina album. This one called Motherlode. There you go. Okay, a Chet Atkins record. I don't often pick up Chet Atkins record. Again, just a wonderful player, but this one really struck me in terms of the first Nashville guitar quartet that features Canada's Leona Boyd. Now, Leona Boyd, known as a classical guitarist, I didn't know she did any work with Chet Atkins at all, so it was happy to pick this one up. It's a lovely, lovely album too. I mean, obviously you can't, these are top-notch players, but just a very nice album. So I was happy to pick this one up locally for just a couple of bucks. Chet Atkins and the first Nashville Guitar Quartet. There you have it. Beverly Brothers reunion concert, and just hard to believe the Beverly Brothers, Phil and Don, no longer with us. This is a double album that was recorded in the UK, recorded at the Albert Hall, September 23rd, 1983, as part of the big reunion for the brothers that was happening at the time, and they're in great form here. It's a great set list for a double album, and well received from the audience. You could just kind of feel the love in the air, kind of thing, and sounded great. So a double album. I didn't even know this album existed, but happy to come across this one. Here's an artist I've seen, but until now, I've never owned anything from this artist, sort of folk artist, Tom Rush. Now, this is not his first album. I think this is maybe, I want to say his third or fourth album, but his first on Columbia. Dave Bromberg is featured on here. And yeah, I'm going to have to explore this artist a lot more, Tom Rush. But as I said, I often don't see any Tom Rush albums, and this on Columbia. So yeah, I was happy to pick this up. He's got a really nice sound. I'm definitely going to have to check out more of his stuff for sure. And speaking of David Bromberg, an artist I have definitely discovered through the VC and on vinyl, another great David Bromberg album, and this is Midnight on the Water. Quite a Celtic influence on this one. Again, David Bromberg is an artist and the band that can pretty much do it all. Bluegrass, country, folk, rock, and a Celtic influence on this one. And this one features a number of guest artists on here. I do believe, as I was reading, Bernie Leadon from the Eagles is featured on this one. Also, Ricky Skaggs is on here. I believe Dr. John Emmylou Harris is featured on here. And I believe I was reading that Bonnie Raitt, I think, was featured on here as well. So, yeah, just another amazing band, David Bromberg band. Just incredible. Okay, here's a best of. That's a pretty solid best of for this artist, but it really needs a different cover. This is just too 80s, it's too Miami Vice, but it's a nice album. I mean, Boz Scaggs hits. It's got everything you're looking for in terms of Lowdown, Lido Shuffle, Breakdown Dead Ahead is a great rocker, JoJo, another great song, a nice ballad, Look What You've Done to Me, but man, that cover is, you're just thinking, what? But yeah, I was able to pick this one up at Boz Scaggs, formerly of the Steve Miller Band, and his solo best of. Here's a live album from a Canadian artist that I did not know existed, a Murray McLaughlin double live album that's called Only the Silence Remains on True North. And this is kind of in keeping. There's also an early Bruce Cockburn live album that's very much like this one. That Bruce Cockburn one is a double live album, just completely Bruce Cockburn's solo and solo acoustic. And Murray McLaughlin is just accompanied by a bass player on this one. But you got a lot of that great early Murray McLaughlin stuff down by the Henry Moores on here, Farmer Song, Child Song, and just sparse arrangements, just Murray McLaughlin accompanied by a bass player. But didn't even know this double live album existed, but happy to pick this one up. And this was on Columbia, on this one, True North Columbia. And I want to say, it doesn't really say the year on here, but it's early. It was recorded in 1975, so there you go. Okay, here's an album you've seen likely many, many times. I've actually never seen the film. This is the movie FM with the soundtrack that features all, the usual suspects from the mid to late 70s. I think this came out in 1978. But a pretty solid kind of best of through and through. But this one also contains the original poster, which I don't often see. And it's got that kind of glossy look going on here, and I think Martin Mull is featured in the movie on this one. Nice big picture of Jimmy Buffett there. But this features the poster, if I can find it in here. Yep, here's the poster, and I'll get you a quick look at it. Kind of a unusual, but very sort of radio station kind of based looking poster. But yeah, don't often see the poster with this one. So there you have it. FM, the movie soundtrack. I own lots of soundtracks to films I have never seen. Okay, carrying on, just a couple more records. We have the Italian prog rockers, PFM, and this is Chocolate Kings, and this, I believe, is the North American cover. There was a different cover through Europe. This on Matricore, and man, this is one of they don't always sing in English, but on this one they do sing in English. If you like prog rock, definitely pick up this band, PFM. Great Italian prog rock band. We've got some Elvin Bishop. This is Hog Heaven. I don't know if you can see it. This was also in The Shrink as well, but pretty classy looking cover going on here. But it's another great Elvin Bishop album, and Amos Garrett is also featured on this one as well. Great guitarist. And last but not least, I guess I should have had this with the other Barry White album. This is Barry White's Greatest Hits. And I do love this cover, but again, in terms of Barry White stuff, this features pretty much everything that you're going to want. Okay, I think we made it without the computer or the iPad shutting down. So hopefully we got this all in, and we'll chat again. Take care. Bye-bye. Hope everybody's doing well.